just off that one property alone, probably in the course of 10 years, was going to make him a millionaire. And are these stories rare? Yes, but isn't it a testament to how you can set yourself up for future success with literally no money out of pocket? Absolutely. You just have to get educated and then execute. And everybody in the military who listens to this, you should know how to do both of those things.
Hello, Freedom Blueprint listeners. Thank you for joining us for another episode. And today I'm very excited that I have as a special guest, Wes Thompson, a past client, and he's become a good friend, and he's an awesome real estate investor with a fabulous story to share. Thank you so much for joining me here today, Wes.
Oh, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation, Adrienne. It's always great to catch up with you as you guys traverse the world.
Well, thank you. And I know you have your own journey of being around the world as well. It's a big part of your story. And so what I'd love is let's just start. I know you are a retired military. You're investing a lot in the Chattanooga, Tennessee area. How did you get started? What brought you to this point now?
So what brought me to this point now, it really started with COVID. And during that time, I was serving overseas in Africa and had a lot of time on my hands. And I was getting closer to retirement and realized that I was not as financially sound as I needed to be or probably should be at that point in life. So as I was going on very long walks every day because I had nothing else to do over in Zambia, one of the books that I'd always known about but had never read was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I plugged that into an audiobook as I was walking, and by the time I finished with it, just realized I knew nothing about investing or real estate or anything like that. And so as I started to adventure down different avenues of investing, I just really come to fall in love with real estate. And so that's been my main focus ever since.
So that is your hobby, is real estate investing, pretty much, your side gig.
As weird as that sounds, yes, my hobby is real estate investing. And, we say hobby, and I think that's a good term for it, but it's a lot more than that. As you go through the real estate investing journey, you meet a lot of people along the way who you interact with, become friends with, whether they live close to you or from far away. And so it's really been a great outlet just to expand, relationships outside of the military, which is what I had known for, my entire adulthood up until that point in time.
I'm sure it brought a whole new world into you. I'm sure it exposed you to a whole new world. And it's amazing how real estate can make connections across any distance, right? Because often our greatest colleagues or mentors in real estate aren't necessarily in our own backyard, right? They can be totally online, long distance relationships. And thinking of long distance, I think if you don't win, you at least tie for the award in terms of the longest distance real estate investing when you were in Africa investing in Chattanooga. So what I'd love for other long distance investors, let's start at the beginning of that. How did you decide on Chattanooga as a market? And then how did you end up investing there? Like, how did the mechanics of that work across that distance?
Sure. So Chattanooga really came to mind because it's a place that my wife and I plan on relocating to, possibly settling down forever, ever. My wife grew up in East Tennessee in between Chattanooga and Knoxville. She is the only member of her family who doesn't live in between Chattanooga and Knoxville. So it's she did her undergrad at UT Chattanooga. And so she's always loved the city, and I've grown to love it over the years too. We go and visit it every time we go to visit family. And so whatever reason was just a place that popped into our heads initially. And as I started to research real estate investing more and more, the social media algorithms got me. I think it was actually my wife who saw a post in a Facebook group for investing in real estate if you don't live in the US. And that's what brought me to the REI Concierge with Tim and Lisa. And that's where I initially heard about and then was introduced to you once we decided that Chattanooga was going to be our market. My wife and I got married at the Choo Choo, and we had our wedding reception on the riverboat there. So Chattanooga has always been a second home to us, and we knew that we're going to relocate there. So we decided if we're going to grow a portfolio, let's build it at a place that we plan to be at, because here in the DC area, building a portfolio is kind of complicated.
I love that thoughtfulness of, hey, this is likely to be a place that we're going to live in the future. And it's a great market for real estate investing. As I started my agent career in the DC area, and and I started my investing in the DC area, and it's an appreciation play. Let's just say that. It's very difficult to find something where the numbers work as an investment. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that that kind of prompted you into long distance real estate investing, because so often people try to make it work in their local market and it's not ideal, right? The numbers aren't great, or it's just not a good market for it. And so I'm glad that you were able to avoid all of that and just start long distance. So you're in Africa, you get connected online with me as your agent. How did it go from there? What were some things that, like, how did you feel comfortable investing sight unseen? I think that's a struggle that a lot of long distance real estate investors struggle.
Yeah, it was very much a struggle, mainly because we had rented houses sight unseen before with moving around from the military, and those didn't always turn out so well. But what kind of I guess you say, eased those fears was, one, we didn't have a choice. If we were going to do it, we had to find people that we could work with that we trusted. And two, we had control. Whereas if we rented a house, we didn't have control. But we're saying, hey, we're going to buy, a property, and that's going to be ours to control. We can do whatever we want with it. So after Tim and Lisa introduced me to you, and I think I had heard you on their podcast originally too, it was one of the first 5 or 6 episodes. And knowing that Lisa is a successful investor in the Chattanooga area herself, if I fail with this team, then I fail with this team, but I can't think of anybody else who I would have put my trust in, having never met them before, to say, I know that you're going to take care of me. You worked with a lot of out of area investors. You worked with investors from afar. Tim and Lisa were investors from afar. And so, having built a relationship with them, if they put their stamp of approval on you, then I knew they were not going to let me down. And they didn't, and you have never let me down either.
I'm glad to hear that. And you bring up a lot of good principles there that people could follow, right? Like finding somebody who's already done it, right? And following in their footsteps. And it worked out perfectly. So that's awesome. And now you continued to invest in Chattanooga even after you moved back to the States.
Yes. Yeah. And the big reason for that was I've, come to, and mainly it's because of you, have built such a trusted network of professionals in the area that I know it would take me months to try and duplicate that somewhere else, and might not ever be able to duplicate that again. So from a trust standpoint, which is everything to me, because I'm still an out of the area investor, even though I'm closer, I'm still out of the area. But everyone within the network, my network that you've introduced me to, and other relationships that I've built off those networks, no one has let me down. No one has run away with my money. No one has done terrible work, and I continue to work with all of them. So that means the world to me. And if that means I could get better deals going somewhere else, but that trust isn't going to be there, or the quality of those relationships or the work that gets done isn't there, then it wouldn't be worth it to me.
That's a really good point. The numbers might look better somewhere else and you could go there, but then one bad experience with a contractor or a property manager can cost a lot and wipe out a lot of the theoretical gains, right? So that team is so important. So for listeners who maybe are unhappy with their team or looking to build a team, what would your wisdom be? What's helped you get this all-star team that's worked well? And have you ever had to change any members of your team or handle any conflict? What would your wisdom be for that, building a team?
My wisdom would be, especially if you're investing from outside of the area, is trust the input of other investors in the area who are more successful than you. You being the perfect example for that. You weren't just my agent, but you were my confidant. And when we went under contract on the duplex in Chattanooga, which was my first investment property, it was, now I need a property manager. And you said, I know exactly who you need to talk to. And then I said, I'm going to need a contractor. And you said, this is the guy you want to talk to, and he's married to the property manager. And, I said, I need a loan person. And you said, this is who you want to talk to. And because I think I had known you well enough at that point in time that you were not going to put your name on the line for someone who hadn't already performed for you. And I know that in the real estate games, relationship is everything. And if you're sending me to somebody, if they didn't treat me with the same care that they treat you and your properties, that would not be good for your relationship with them either. So yeah, everything has worked out perfectly, and I still continue to use all those same people today.
That is such a success story and great for people to hear, because it just gives them inspiration and an example that it can work well. So let's talk about, you mentioned your property manager and your contractor. Can you kind of share with everybody what your investing strategy has been in Chattanooga, why you decided to go with that strategy and how it's worked out?
Sure. I initially started the BRRRR strategy just because that made the most sense. And there was definitely opportunity in the Chattanooga market for BRRRR properties. And working with you, I knew that my first deal was going to have to come from the MLS because there really was no other way to do it. There was no way I was going to start doing off market advertising, trying to reach out to sellers. I was 12 hours ahead over there. I was going to bed when you guys were waking up. So that wasn't an option. That's not what I wanted to do anyway. Lo and behold, that first property that we did do together kind of was technically off market anyway, but that came from you having a relationship with another broker and just being in the right place at the right time and finding out that it was coming off a contract and it was a good opportunity to potentially put it under contract again before it went back onto the market. And that's exactly what we did. So yeah, that's really about how I started. Today, though, I'm more focused on creative finance, subject to seller finance. Mainly on the acquisition side, I don't spend time going after properties to wholesale. That's just not something I want to get into, and that's a business in and of itself. And I don't really want to sell anything that I would potentially get under contract either. So that's where I'm at now. The BRRRR strategy worked out really well for me. I hear a lot of real estate podcasts these days where people are saying that the BRRRR strategy is played out. It doesn't work anymore. I think there's a little bit of truth to that, but I think if you're just kind of focusing on the strategy as a whole, I think you're kind of missing the bigger point of it all, right? Which is if you're buying under value and you're generating value add into the property, then whether that, especially that refinance part right now where you're looking at, 6.5 to 7.5, 8% interest, depending on how you're doing it. Yeah, it's probably not the best deal, but if you don't need to refinance that and you can hold it for a couple more years and see what happens, well, then you'll probably be okay. And so I think a lot of people are missing, how's that saying go? They're missing the forest through the trees.
That's a great point. I feel like so often in real estate, people will think, oh, the numbers don't work, or like you're saying that BRRRR is dead. And it's often an issue because they need to zoom out, right? Real estate is not a short-term game, right? I think it's part of our overall culture that we tend to just look at how quickly can things happen now, that we can do everything or nearly everything in an instant, right? We've lost the sense of the time that a lot of things take. So
well, if you're wholesaling or if you're doing a fix and flip, then yes, you're definitely in it for the short game, but that's not where I am. That's not what I want to do. To me, those are businesses, and I have no intention of starting a business around real estate except for growing my own portfolio.
That's a very good point. Those are businesses, and they don't have the tax advantages of other forms of real estate investing as well. They're taxed as ordinary income. So let's give people a picture of how this has worked out for you, right? What's the result been? Like, what does your portfolio look like? Have you had these tax advantages? Are you is the income there yet? Are you reinvesting everything? Now that you've been at this for a while, give us a picture of what your portfolio looks like and at this time.
Sure. So my portfolio currently is 5 properties, one which is a former primary that's down near Augusta, Georgia, and then I have 4 in Chattanooga. And so I'm averaging about 1 or 2 a year. There was a year between 2021 and now where we moved back to the States, so I wasn't, hey, we don't need to buy anything right now because, we're going to be moving to the other side of the world again and don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, so it's 4 properties in Chattanooga right now. The duplex, which was my first property that I purchased with you. And that one has worked out astoundingly well. Even my property manager is amazed how much revenue that property is generating to this day. And then 2022 or 23, I think it was 23, purchased another single family there with Jessica, who was on your team, representing me as the agent in that. And that I would have to say is probably one of my more favorite deals because I saw when that one came onto the market, I think it was like $110,000. And for those of you who are sitting there thinking you can't buy anything for $110,000 anymore, you sure can if you come to Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so as soon as I saw that property, I said, I think it's undervalued. I look at the MLS all the time. I look at listings in the area, and I thought it's going to sell for more than $110,000. It looked really good in the photos, so we ended up putting an offer in at $115,000 and locked it up. Well, then after we did walkthrough and inspection, there was a lot of things that were hiding in that property, and we actually ended up buying it for $90,000 because of the amount of work that it needed. But it appraised for 108 at the sale. So was already walking into almost $20,000 worth of equity right off the bat, which was nice. Then there was a property there the end of 25. So the end of 2023 that I purchased via Subject 2. And that was with Gina Shumway from your team, who now is running things on your behalf there in Chattanooga. And she and I started working together and is a great partner and relationship working on creative deals there in Chattanooga. And then I bought a seller finance deal from a wholesaler July of last year in the area. And he was also or is also an agent, and we talk regularly, and I'm actually helping him purchase a primary home with creative finance right now.
Here's a word from our sponsor. Are you an active real estate investor feeling overwhelmed by endless tasks? Workergenics is here to help with their full-service virtual staffing solutions. They're offering a free tool called the Delegate or Die Checklist, which outlines 100 tasks you as a real estate investor can delegate to a virtual assistant. Imagine focusing on the big picture while your VA handles the details. Gain the freedom and efficiency you deserve in your investments. Download the Delegate or Die Checklist now at workergenics.com/freedom blueprint. That's workergenix.com/freedom blueprint. Take control of your time and boost your productivity today. Now, back to our show.
I think there's a lot of gems in your story, and I love how you shared the story of that house. Yes, that was listed for $110,000. I actually am working on a book, and that story is in the book, Wes. So I will let you know when it's out, and you can see it there. But one of the things, and the reason I put that story in the book, and maybe you can speak to this, is your mindset, right? You did a lot of things in that deal. You persevered and made a lot of choices that a lot of other real estate investors wouldn't do because of fear or limiting beliefs. So like, I know you went above asking, which a lot of real estate investors have a real mental block to ever offering over asking price. They feel like that they're not getting a good deal when, like you said, the asking price was under market value. So it made sense to go above asking. And then I know you got a surprising inspection report on that house. That's why the price was renegotiated. And again, a lot of investors would have just been afraid of that and walked away. They would have thought things or justified that with things like, well, if they found this much, there might be a whole lot more, right? I might be walking into a hot mess. And so those were a couple things where you really demonstrated, I think, being logical over being emotional and knowing how to do the right thing. So maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, my mindset behind that, and with a lot of deals that I look to do, is that I know just looking at photos and looking at the listing is really only scratching the surface of what's going on. And if it's something that I see value in, I always want to know more, right? That's why you have finance contingencies. That's why you have inspection contingencies. You have the due diligence. And so with that property, I looked at it and just from what I saw in the listing, I thought it was undervalued. But I wanted the opportunity to take a closer look. And I knew the only way that was going to happen was to have the strongest offer, because I knew I was not going to be the only offer. But I didn't want to throw something unexpected or unrealistic out there. So I said, I'm going to take my shot and I'm going to put it at 115,000 when it's on the market for 110, and I got it. And that gave me the opportunity to get in there, just spend a few $100s doing an inspection, and then from that inspection said, okay, I can't realistically pay you $110,000 for this house. It's not worth it. It's going to need a whole bunch of work. And then we went to renegotiate the price. I said 90. They came back at 95. I told Jessica that wasn't going to work for me. I had to stay to 90. And then about 5 minutes after I hung up the phone with her on that call, I called her back and said, am I making a mistake by saying no to 95? And she was very upfront and honest with me, which I wholly appreciate her doing. And, essentially just end up saying, let's stay at 90. And if they come back and say they're not going to do 95, then say, okay, we'll do 95. But she stuck to her guns and we ended up getting it for 90, which I think was definitely a much better deal. And then with that property was the first time I worked with a partner. So I actually have a partner on that property, and they brought in the renovation funds, which was about $50,000. And the property appraised for almost 200. And this was a year and some change ago. So talking about the BRRRR strategy, right, that would definitely be one where you could go and refinance it. We didn't refinance it. We still haven't refinanced it. our interest rate is in like the mid sixes on it, but because our loan balance is so low, it cash flows amazingly. So just say, hey, why don't we just hold on to it and just let it cash flow? And, we got a HELOC for $100,000 on it. And so we have access to liquidity if we need it. And yeah, so we're just hanging on to that one and seeing what the future brings.
I love that. So many lessons in that story. And for our listeners, if you are eyeing the Chattanooga market, I know we've talked about it a lot, please reach out to me and I will connect you with an amazing team there, right? With my old real estate agent team. And if you need other service providers, I can do that as well. So, I'm all over this place and how to contact me. So reach out and love to connect you with the team. So now, Wes, you've learned so much. You're really executing every deal well that you have. A lot of your life experience has been in the military. I'd love to hear how that's played a part in your real estate investing. And if you have other wisdom for, other people in the military who are maybe thinking about or early on in their investing journey.
Sure. That's going to be 2 long answers. So I'm going to take the second one first because the first one I'm a little bit wishy-washy on. But for the second one, for those who are maybe younger in life or who are in the military and who are listening to this, you have a lot of great opportunities and benefits that you can leverage to invest in, especially with real estate because you have your VA loan. And so that allows you to purchase up to a 4-unit property with no money out of pocket. So if you're young and you're single and you're living off base, go buy you a property, rent out the rooms, buy a duplex, triplex, quadplex. It's called house hacking. It's all over the internet. You can find it. One of the best stories that I ever heard was there was a young Marine who was stationed out in San Diego, and he used his VA loan to purchase a quadplex in San Diego. And he was living in 1 unit, and he was renting out the other 3. And I think he purchased the property for $1 million. So this is a young man in the military who got a loan for $1 million on a VA loan to buy a quadplex in San Diego. The 3 units that he was living in paid his entire monthly mortgage and insurance and taxes, and he was still cash flowing. I think it was about $1,500 a month off of it. Plus, he was getting his housing allowance that he wasn't having to use to pay for the property. So he lived in it for 3 years. By the time he left, he was cash flowing, I think it was about $3,000 a month. And then when he moved out and rented out the 4th unit, now he was cash flowing about $5,000 a month or more than that off of that property. And it was now worth, I think, $1.6 million. So just off that one property alone, probably in the course of 10 years, was going to make him a millionaire. And are these stories rare? Yes. But isn't it a testament to how you can set yourself up for future success with literally no money out of pocket? Absolutely. You just have to get educated and then execute. And everybody in the military who listens to this, you should know how to do both of those things.
That is a fabulous story and really does speak to the underlying principles of real estate investing that people can utilize in any market, wherever they're stationed at the time. And the numbers may look a little different, and yet it's still going to be a win.
Yes. Yeah. The worst thing you can do is do nothing, like I did for many years.
Right. I always think of the saying of when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. It's the same thing with buying real estate.
Absolutely. So what was the first question that you had? We'll get back to that one.
Right. It was, how do you think your time and experience in the military has shaped you or helped you as an investor?
So it's taught me to be patient and to not freak out. It's kind of cliche, especially within the military community. But one of the things is when things start going bad or you start encountering hurdles, I always just revert to, I'm not getting shot at, so my life isn't really that bad. Like with the duplex that we bought, I think within 2 weeks after we closed on that property, started having issues. Tenants weren't paying. City was knocking on the door. Safety issues. Then came zoning issues. But I trusted you. I trusted my property manager. And even though it took a little bit of work and a little bit of education, we figured it out. It was just keep putting one foot in front of the other. Take that next step. Get over that next hurdle and just keep driving on. I know there was at one point in time, I think I had reached out to you and said, Adrienne, I don't know what's going on. I think we need to sell this place because I did not sign up for all of this. And then I took a step back and said, there's got to be a way around it. We got to figure it out. And we did. And it wasn't that complicated. It wasn't expensive. It took more time than I would have liked, but we got it done. And now looking back over the last 3 years, that those pain points and overcoming those pain points made me a better investor and just made me more aware of things to look through as I move through any acquisition process in the future.
Right. All of those pain points were the opportunity to learn and level up and increase your toolkit.
Yep, absolutely.
And I love what you shared there, Wes, because it definitely resonates. And that's something I see the difference in working with real estate investors between those who really can succeed and those who cannot, is that ability to, again, step back from the situation and not, react emotionally, but instead respond logically and realize the bigger picture. I think in the US, we're so insulated. So many of us have such amazing lives. I've seen that as, traveling the world now with my family. We are so privileged in the US. The US really takes care of a lot of things, but then the challenge is life is so cozy that little bumps in the road can seem like huge, huge mountains. And so, yeah, sometimes you just need to say, hey, it's a good day. I'm not being shot at.
Yeah, you're not here trying to pay $9.99 for a dozen eggs right now. Life is. My wife was at the grocery store the other day. She said, "Do you need anything?" I said, "Pick me up a dozen eggs." She said, "They're $10.99 a dozen." I said, "Don't pick me up any eggs."
That is crazy.
And then we think about back when we were living in Africa, and you could get 3.5 dozen eggs for roughly $2.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that is
Sorry, story tangent.
That is the one thing about living in the United States. It's funny, it's relevant and it's speaking to the stereotypes people have and I guess combating them. And we can have those same stereotypes in real estate investing. So, like I'm traveling the world with my family and honestly, one of the benefits is it costs us less, even renting furnished Airbnbs in the places we go, even using Grab or Uber, things like that exclusively for our transportation. It costs us less than it did when we lived in the United States. And so that is not something people would expect. And I think we have those same kind of, surprises with real estate investing. People's expectations or their idea of how it should work isn't often reality. Did you have any surprises in your real estate investing journey? Can you remember anything where it wasn't as you expected, either for the better or for the worse, or not even with a value judgment, just it was different?
Well, I have to say it was much different when I started getting into creative finance strategies. Until you can learn a lot about them, but until it's kind of like one of those things. It's like math, right? And learning algebra and formulas and stuff like that. You can walk through the steps. If you don't understand what it is that you're doing, then you're kind of missing the whole picture. And I kind of revert it to like learning a language, to where as you start learning, you're struggling, you're working at it. But then eventually, like one day, you just learn something that just makes everything kind of click and fall into place, and it makes things easier. And that's kind of what creative finance did for me, to where it's really just become the only way I want to do deals now. Well, one, because it's kind of just the way the market is, but two, what I really like about it is it puts you in a position to where you're not just buying a property, but you're in there trying to solve a problem. And it's like a puzzle. And I really like puzzles. I like the mind games that come with puzzles. And I heard a really good analogy for it a few months ago that I'll share, where, have you ever seen any of those like doctor shows like House or The Resident or ER or something like that? There's always one character who's the diagnostician, right? And their job is to look at all these different systems and try and figure out at the heart, what is the underlying issue? And so that's kind of what I equate creative finance to, is kind of being like a real estate doctor, where if you're selling a property or you're looking to sell or you need to sell, there's a reason for it. And once you can dig down with somebody and get to that reason, then you can come up with a solution for that problem. And I think, as I get better at that and I find more opportunities to do that, you're not just initiating a transaction, but you're helping somebody out along the way. And when it's somebody who's in need, somebody who's facing a big problem like a foreclosure, a job loss, familial loss, or something like that, you really get to put yourself in a position to help other people. And at that point, it doesn't necessarily become about what you're gaining out of the traction, but it's the joy of just being there for somebody else and bringing them a solution that nobody else might have been able to bring them, or they wouldn't have had the opportunity to. And so that's what's been a big change for me.
I love all of that, Wes. And I think several of my retired military or former military clients or friends and real estate investor colleagues, they speak to the way that real estate investing lets them help people. I think in the military, you really learn that act of helping people in service, and it does. And so it's great to hear you share that part of the journey.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And, a normal transaction that you just buy a rental property off the MLS, most of the time I don't even know the name of somebody who buys it or someone who's selling it until I get, those closing documents, to sign. There's no interaction. But when you're in the creative world, especially if you're reaching out to sellers directly, and you're finding out about these problems, then you're able to bring a solution and help them. I think there's a lot of power into that. Call it karma, the universe, or something like that. But it really, to me, it makes a huge difference because then it's more of a partnership than it is just a transaction. I don't like doing just straight transactions anymore.
Well, Wes, I think you've shared a lot of your journey and there's a lot of wisdom in it for other people. Thank you so much for opening up and doing that. I'd like to go ahead and wrap up with our quick fire questions if you're ready.
Okay. Yep, let's do it.
First, what is a transformational system you've implemented in your business?
So I'd have to say transformational system is definitely creative finance, learning more about it, implementing it, taking the action behind it. That's really been transformational for me. It led me to buying 100% seller finance property for 0% interest. I mean, where are you going to find another opportunity to buy something for 0% interest? So, yeah.
And what is your go-to tool for managing operations?
My go-to tool is property management. Shout out to Dorby, shout out to Ashley Cross and the team out there in Chattanooga. I wouldn't do anything without their help and support. There's not a deal I would do. There's not a strategy that I would execute that if they weren't behind it, I would do it because everything that I have built there and continue to build there, I couldn't have done without them and their knowledge and their connections. And moving forward, I can't imagine continuing to do business without them.
And what is a book that's been transformational in your investing journey?
So there's actually two that I want to share. And the first one is Wealth Without Cash by Pace Morby. It's all about creative finance, not just acquisition side, but disposition side, lead generation, how to talk to people, how to negotiate, right? How to get to the heart of those problems. And then the second one that was transformational, and I think I've probably listened to it because I mainly do audiobooks. I think I've gone through it 4 times now, is Set for Life by Scott Trench. And it's more about personal finance and not real estate, but from a personal finance side, which was an area I was also weak in, that book really resonated with me and really helped me understand personal finances and therefore change mine so that it fit what my goals and intentions are.
That's a really great point. And I would say that getting my personal finances organized was really a foundational step to having the funds to do real estate investing. So we can sometimes overlook that. Thank you for highlighting that, Wes.
Yep, absolutely.
Now, people would like to reach out and connect with you. Your story resonated with them. Where can they find you?
The best place to find me is on Instagram. My handle is It's Wes Thompson, that's THOMPSON. There's not a whole lot of content there because I used to have another business that was a coffee company. And when I shut that down, I didn't want to go and start a whole nother Instagram page. So I just restructured that one and deleted all of the coffee content off of it and made it my personal one. And I'm not a big content creator. It's just not really my thing. It's not something I want to spend my time on. I post to it occasionally, but it's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me.
Perfect. And we will have that in the show notes. It's Wes Thompson, and that's where you can DM if you want to reach out, talk to Wes, and continue the conversation. Well, thank you so much, Wes, and thank you to our listeners. I hope you join us again next week for another episode of the Freedom Blueprint.